Hey everyone, it's Sri here. Exciting developments on the TAO front from a technical perspective, and also obviously because of the DeepSeek disruption that we've seen the last couple of days. People basically reaching a critical mass, realizing, hey, we can actually access AI and develop it for much cheaper. We can make this open source. It can maybe even be decentralized. And so that actually was a catalyst for a move that I've been waiting for some time now. And it's not showing up so much specifically in the TAO chart yet, although there is some hints of a resurgence with TAO here as we enter into the FOMC. That's going to play a part in it, but I just want to talk about what I'm seeing relative to some of the other charts. So BarrySilbert obviously talking about Bittensor eating the AI world. It's interesting to see them sort of ramping up their efforts to spread awareness. I consider Barry to be a representative of smart money. Grayscale is heavily invested in Bittensor, and it makes sense that they would be talking about this now while it is still in a reaccumulation zone. Okay, so that is key. And then I was mentioning this chart in a thread. I talked about this, I think it was at least a month ago. I shared this chart and I was waiting for the breakout of this area here, which I had previously identified. And I was not so sure whether we would see a deviation, which we did see a few days ago, just like here. Okay, it sort of didn't quite happen here, but we saw it here. And then the break, the convincing break that followed that, and that's actually happened here over just the last couple of days since the DeepSeek disruption, basically. And so you see we have wave one and then wave two, a consolidation in between. This is relative to render, which I consider to be the sort of centralized counterpart, which TAO moves before render, and it moves much stronger when it finally does. And this is sort of the timing, if there is timing with Bittensor. It does not follow the rest of the market, and this is why it is difficult to time. It does not follow Bitcoin. It does not follow the other alts. So this is actually a very key signal for me. The last two times this happened, we saw a three-month wave or succession of waves, which brought TAO's price up much higher. So this is the very beginning of that. This is what this chart is pointing to. Now, that isn't all that I'm going off of here. I'm also looking at the others chart, and you can see the 3-day. This is the 12 EMA here. It has broken above it, and this is actually the strongest candle that we've seen since this downtrend started in October. Okay, so that's significant. It's not enough by itself, but we have confluence with TAO render. And then if we look at TAO BTC, we do see a strong candle here. It's not really enough to say that this trend has broken yet. It needs to definitely break above here. Even then, it's hard to say. This is sort of an accumulation zone relative to BTC. This isn't really giving us so much clarity here. But if we look at the TAO chart, what you will notice here is, let's drop down to the lower time frames now. Okay, so we are still below the 20 and 50 EMAs. These are not so relevant when we are in a range-bound environment. Okay, we've still been hovering around those November lows, but now we see somewhat of a triangle that's forming here, and it will be interesting to see if we look at this on the weekly. Notice that it did initially reject. You can see I'm kind of sizing up a tentative long here, which I have not positioned in this from a perpetual standpoint right now. So notice here this 21 EMA on the weekly, it is below it. It is rejecting off of it. But if we get a convincing break, especially on the weekly, a strong break above here and above this diagonal here, and we've cleared after FOMC, and we've seen alts starting to come back again, and maybe Bitcoin, it finds support above $100,000. Those could all be confluence for TAO to run much higher. And I think this next time that it runs to these range highs, it's going to break through and head towards 1,000. And that's just my humble opinion on this. But notice on the weekly, you see these 3 long wicks here. So that is also a potentially bullish indication here because it has failed to break down below. And I did mention this just a few days ago that this area here was going to be massive support for TAO. It makes sense. This is a key pivot zone, okay? So on the higher time frames. So we're looking for the break back above 480, a weekly closure above, or a 3-day closure above, and a break above this diagonal here. That might not happen right away. So, and that has nothing to do with TAO. It has more to do with the rest of the market. So we'll see what happens post FOMC. I'm anticipating that Bitcoin will come down somewhat, and it may retest down in the 97, 98K area. And that would be sort of one last flush for alts before alts like Ethereum really start to rage back to 4K and then eventually back to all-time highs. But I think TAO is going to move even potentially before Ethereum moves back to all-time highs. TAO is going to start making its revisit back up to 700 and beyond. So that's sort of that's the short end of it. And I am optimistic on TAO, and I do think that these lows are going to hold. I think that the lows are in for Bittensor, and this narrative is going to gain a lot of speed, a lot of momentum here in the coming months. That's my humble opinion, especially as we see get to see the full effect on the stock market. It may be that this eventually strengthens NVIDIA because they are using their chips, but it also could mean that, especially as we start to see earnings, it could mean that a revaluation is in order, and that could affect big tech. It could affect crypto, but if anything, it should be mid to long-term bullish for TAO, obviously. And this is what we've all been talking about since the inception of Bittensor, and why it's so important, because this is literally the crypto version of DeepSeek, right? It's actually better than DeepSeek in many ways, because it's subnets. It already has 2 subnets that are integrating DeepSeek, and it can do much more. So this is the realization that all it's going to really take is for a subnet to do something like what DeepSeek just did, and to create something that is cheaper, that is easier to use, that is more efficient, that is giving us higher quality data, right? So that's really what this is, where this is headed, I think, for Bittensor. And that's why Grayscale is so heavily invested, and that's why I think you're a fool to be selling at these levels, okay? This is not financial advice. I don't have a magic crystal ball. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I'm just thinking in probabilities right now, and looking at TAO Render, looking at TAO others, specifically these 2 charts, and TAO itself, it has found support. So there is confluence here. It's still early. Anywhere in this area here between 400 and 450 is a massive opportunity, in my humble opinion. I think this is going much higher in this cycle in the next couple of months. We have a 3-month phase here where it could go parabolic. It could go to 1200 and beyond. That would not surprise me in the slightest. So that's my take, and take it or leave it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to support my work, I trade on Blowfin. If you want to trade with me, you get some prizes. You can spin some wheels and all that. I have courses. I have a private membership for traders. I am a trader primarily, so I'm not all in on Bittensor. I do own Bittensor, but it's not my entire portfolio. For those of you that are wondering, I'm not a TAO maxi. I'm not at anything maxi. As a trader, I can profit both ways, and so I like to have a good percentage of my funds that are available for that. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.